At brunch, my son-in-law slapped my plate to the floor and hissed, "Hag, you're unwelcome." I didn't cry. I steadied my hands, noted the time, and let 50 years of mothering teach me how to breathe. Then I gave a thin laugh, asked the manager to keep the cameras, and when my phone pinged, took one quiet step he never saw coming. That moment was only the spark. What followed was a calm audit. 2 envelopes on a table and a deadline that would decide who respects a family and who only spends it. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. First, I noticed the glare off the brass letters River and Elm. The sun struck the window so hard it turned every face on the sidewalk into a pale reflection. Austin on a Saturday does brunch, like a sport hat's, dog strollers, and the smell of coffee. I pressed my palm to the cool door handle and told myself, breathe, Maura. It's only a meal with your daughter. Inside, the host stand glowed with a tablet's blue light. Good morning, I said. Hartwell, Maura. The young man Arliss, according to his pin, scrolled with his thumb, then again with the practiced frown people wear when they blame the Wi-Fi. He glanced past me at the crowd as if my name might be hovering there. I stood steady purse strap across my shoulder like a ruler. We have a party of 3, he said brightly. Shannon Duran plus 1 child. He lifted a paper wristband that read, guest, and then with a policy smile set it down. Apologies, ma'am, wristbands are for listed guests only. Only landed like a fingertip on my sternum. My face warmed. Of course, I said. Let's make sure the list is accurate. Absolutely. I kept my voice even. Would you mind taking a screenshot of the reservation screen and forwarding it to your manager for accuracy? I folded the last word like a clean towel. He hesitated, then tapped. The tablet flashed. Time-stamped, he said, not quite meeting my eye. I wasn't collecting feelings, I was collecting facts. Names, time, faces, the invisible rope of only. The waiting bench by the door was polished to a dull shine. I sat and watched patio tables fill with laughter that rose in little bursts like birds. Servers moved with shoulder-check grace trays bright with grapefruit and syrup. I touched the pearls at my throat, a habit, not a performance. They're old, saved from a younger life when a good man still breathed and our girl gave sticky kisses. The air smelled of orange peel and toast. I counted breaths. Shannon arrived on a small gust of perfume and apology. Mom, she whispered more breath than word fingers at her hair. She offered a quick wave that said, I know, but not here. Behind her, Duran lifted his phone like a mirror and studied it chin-down screen, up the way people do when a camera is their confidant. Lights good by the east wall, he told no one in particular. In that moment, I was a background a shape the frame could live without. I smiled anyway. Mothers learn to stand where love doesn't block the aisle. When the host called their name, I rose. Could you add me to the reservation? I asked gently. We're together. He kept the Smile restaurants trained so it won't slip. Our system locks the count 90 minutes prior, he said. But we can seat you adjacent so you'll all be close. Adjacent is a kind word for not with. I took a slim pen from my purse and circled the blank space where my name would have been on the note I'd made before leaving the house. A ritual. A way to see the whole clearly. The manager approached with a steadier step, a woman in a navy jacket that said, the buck stopped near her keys. I'm supporting Arliss this morning, she said. We had a hiccup. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I nodded. Thank you. One small request, please retain camera footage tied to this reservation and window of time. No heat, no threat. Just a mother with good posture and a long memory. Of course, she said, and her eyes sharpened, noted and time-stamped. We followed the host through a corridor where the light shifted from Texas bright to restaurant hush. Glass clinked, the espresso hissed, a low guitar thrum filled the room. I kept pace heels whispering against tile. Shannon walked ahead, glancing back once with a look that asked for patience, as if it were sugar. Duran had his phone chest high again, testing angles on the fly. When the host slowed, my breath did 2 easing before a curve. He gestured toward a table near the service station, a place where ice baths and silverware live in steel coolers. "We'll start you here then, adjust," he said. I rested my fingers against the pearls, counted 3 heartbeats, then nodded. Across the room, a server tipped her chin toward the east wall, and Joran murmured something about shadows being kinder than direct sun. He was already composing a brunch that would outlive the meal. Light broke into squares along the floor like a quiet grid. The table was set for 3 with a 4th place, angled like an afterthought. The napkin at that seat lay folded but slightly off-center, a small tilt, as if the cloth itself wasn't sure I belonged. I straightened it with one touch. The host slid a spare chair to the end near the station where glassware chimed. "We'll adjust your seat for better pictures," Joran said to the server, not to me. I caught Shannon's eye. She blinked a thank you I pretended not to see because some kindnesses are better quiet. I set my hands flat on the table, palms warm against linen's faint starch. The menu spoke in cheerful italics of eggs and grits. I listened to the pattern I've done that my whole life. It said listed, not listed, wristband, no wristband, together, adjacent. It said a mother can be in the room and still not be counted. The pattern didn't know me well. I breathe through patterns. I document. I set small anchors in the current. I asked for water with lemon and waited. I looked at the time. I smiled at the server and kept my seat. Exactly. They slid a spare chair tight to the wall and tucked my place setting into a sliver between a service station and a column. The legs squeaked. My knees found wood if I shifted. I set my purse under the table, the photo album on my lap to keep it dry, and breathed as if the room had given me a cue. Smaller, please. I let my shoulders settle and kept my smile small. "Can we nudge her a touch farther back?" Joran asked, lifting his phone to measure the room in rectangles. "The east light is messy. I want clean frames." He traced a steering arc in the air. The server's glance met mine polite, and she eased my chair another inch into shadow. His screen flashed in my water glass a brief galaxy. Heat rose and my spine lengthened. A plate drifted past on the server's forearm, poached eggs like pale moons, and the edge of a folded napkin grazed my scarf. When her hand withdrew, a dot of hollandaise shone bright as a seed. "Oops," she breathed, already moving. I dabbed it with water from the spare glass. Small circles, no fuss. Silk remembers everything. So do I. She set a mimosa near my elbow. Condensation slid into a patient ring that crept toward the album. I moved the book an inch away. Still a quiet ache opened like a hinge in my chest. A mother keeps records no one else does. Shannon's eyes stayed low, thumbs quick across her phone. "It's cute," she murmured to the screen, a smile that wasn't for me. I watched her and told myself not to count the seconds. Patience is a thread. Pull too hard and it snaps. I chose not to tug. "Mind if we center the table a bit?" I asked. When the server returned, voice even. "I'd like a dry place for my purse and album." She measured our plates, then nodded. With quiet hands, she nudged a plate, squared the silver, and found me an inch of linen. "There we go," she said, and for a moment the world behaved. Joran chuckled to her, not to me. "Let's also keep Mom out of the frame," he said, sunny as small talk. "Harsh shadows age everyone." The words landed no punch, just a stamp on clay. I filed them beside the timestamp from the host stand. I'm not good at yelling. I am exceptional at remembering. I checked the time, 10:43, and noted the table number engraved on a brass badge near the salt. Above the service station, a dome camera blinked a red dot with patient attention. I pictured the path that footage would take, a request a clip preserved. My hand held steady. My breath moved like someone practicing scales. Food arrived in a hush of clinks and thank yous eggs under pale blankets, potatoes freckled with pepper berries bright as jewels. I angled my plate away from the damp ring and pulled the album's ribbon snug. Joran's elbow drifted into the space where my fork planned to go. He leaned over his plate, guarding it. "Hold for me," he told the server, and she froze so his camera could eat first. Mom Shannon said, still not looking up, "They do a seasonal jam that's really good." The sentence was a small bridge, but it existed. "I'll try some," I said, and reached for the jam with care. The spoon clinked. I set it back. Small order in a small radius. Actually, Duran slid his phone into the crook of his wrist to free both hands. Let me pull this closer. Your plate's reflecting. He hooked 2 fingers under the rim and drew my plate toward the edge to make room for his shot. The server's eyes flicked to my face, then up to the camera, then back to her tray. I laid my palm flat on the cloth. Cool linen met my skin. From the service station came the crystalline fall of new ice. Behind me, a child laughed, then was shooshed. The room settled into a murmur. My chair tapped the wall when I breathed too deeply. I eased forward a fraction to give my ribs space and let the air out slowly through my nose. The pearls rested where they always do. One bead met my fingertip and anchored me. I reached for water, sipped, and set it down with the gentlest touch I own. Could we keep all the plates a hand's breadth from the edge? I asked, calm as a recipe. I'd feel better. The server nodded at once, the quick agreement reserved for reason. Duran's mouth tightened, an expression he probably saves for traffic. We're fine, he told her lightly. It's just a shot. The camera watched indifferent. I kept my posture soft but tall, the way choir taught me, chest lifted, chin free. Under the table, the album's ribbon tickled my knee. I pictured the first photo, Shannon at 6, blue frosting on her lip, my hand holding the plate steady while she blew. The past is patient. It waits. I looked at the table instead. Shannon cleared her throat. Mom, do you want? She stopped, eyes falling to her napkin. I offered half a smile so she wouldn't have to find the missing word. I'm good, I said. Sometimes good is simply an unclenched jaw. Hold, Duran said again, swinging his elbow wide to frame his plate. The motion was casual, a tiny conquest of inches. The server hovered with a refill, then drew back. I let my palm press a little more weight into the linen, as if the table and I had agreed to keep each other steady until the next thing arrived. A tray bell chimed. Somewhere a cork sighed free. The server tucked a stray hair behind her ear and reset a fork that wasn't crooked. Small mercies. I counted them the way sailors count buoys, not for luck, but for direction. Dignity prefers quiet lanes. His elbow clipped my plate, and the room seemed to hold its breath. The plate lifted before my mind caught up. One moment it rested on linen, the next it skimmed the table's lip and sailed a bright wheel of china. Light glanced off the rim. Sauce lifted in tiny beads that hung in the air like pollen. My body did the old thing, freeze first, breathe later. Sound tunneled. Time slowed enough for me to see my own reflection bend across the curve. It hit tile with a sharp, ringing crack. Conversation snapped in two around us. Forks paused mid-air. Somewhere, a glass chimed. The sound shot up into the rafters and came down as quiet. I felt the floor through the chair legs and let my breath return in a measured line. My hands stayed where I had placed them, palms flat, nothing dramatic to feed. Hag, you're unwelcome. Duran said, his voice low enough to sound private and cruel enough to carry. The word had the flat weight of a label pressed on a jar. A couple at the next table inhaled hard. He stared at the shards like he'd only pointed at gravity. I noted the shape of the sentence, the order of the words, the unearned ownership of it. Reflection skated in the front glass patio umbrellas, shifting with the breeze, while the ceiling dome above the service station blinked its red dot patient as a lighthouse. The server's apology arrived in fragments. I'm so sorry, ma'am. She glanced once at Arliss near the host stand. He'd already turned toward us, shoulders squared, hands empty. The world came back in angles and distances neat as a drawing. Hollandaise spotted my skirt and the top of one shoe. Yellow freckles spread like a constellation I didn't ask for. A napkin arrived. I lifted a corner and blotted, careful not to grind anything in. I kept my breath even and my jaw soft, the way you do holding a note you've sung 1,000 times. Silk dries. Pride takes longer. I looked at my hands so they would behave. Please don't throw things, I said to Duran, nothing more, nothing raised. A sentence like a fence line. He scoffed without words, a little huff he probably uses on parking attendants and flight delays. I didn't give him air to build with. I went on smoothing the napkin and set it aside as if this were any Saturday that could be made tidy by sequence. Arliss arrived at my shoulder with the contained calm of a man who has seen most things. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Please note the table and time." The server tapped her watch and nodded toward the wall camera. I repeated the minute in my head, 10:51. I touched my pearls not for comfort, but to mark the moment for myself the way you dog-ear a page. I lifted my purse from the floor and moved the damp-edged album to safety on a dry fold of linen. A shallow sauce splash had reached one ribbon. I drew it through the napkin until it ran clean. I aligned my fork parallel to a line of shards, the small geometry soothing. Order helps people stand up. I do what helps me stand up. Did he just a woman at the next table whispered? Her companion laid a hand over hers. "Don't," she murmured, though her eyes stayed on me. Someone farther back said, "That's not okay," into their glass. The room hovered, waiting to see if I would ignite or dissolve. Neither felt useful. I kept my eyes level and my mouth in a line that says I can speak when I choose. I rose without scraping the chair. Linen slid wood sighed, and that was all. I looked at the server. "I'll settle my portion," I told her. She swallowed and nodded. "Of course." Across from me, Joran flicked at a fleck of sauce on his sleeve, like the mess insulted him by landing there. Shannon stared into her napkin as if it were a screen. Somewhere a child laughed again, softer this time. The room exhaled and moved a fraction. Arliss kept a respectful distance. "We can comp," he began. "No," I said, pleasant as a bell. "Please print an itemized check for my meal only, and secure the footage if you would." He paused, then nodded. "Understood." I slid the album flat inside my tote and fastened the clasp. The pearls were cool against my neck. I checked my phone screen for the minute again, and the lock screen bloomed like an answer I hadn't asked for yet. A single banner slid across my lock screen. Family card. Unusual activity. Not an alarm, a tap on the shoulder from a system I'd set years ago. Beneath it, the sub-account name I'd chosen glowed, Vale Household Courtesy. Courtesy had been the point. Give help without spectacle, keep receipts without bitterness. The pending total matched 2 glossy charges I hadn't made limited edition sneakers, a tasting menu I did not attend. A smile thin as porcelain found me, not Triumph Clarity. I didn't open the app. I let my thumb hover and then set it on the table. The server returned with a neat strip of paper. "Your entree and coffee," she said. "Thank you," I answered, sliding out my card. Across from me, Shannon's eyes lifted and fell, tugged by tides I couldn't command. I let the ache pass through and not widen. Joran shifted, restless with the lack of theater. "We're not finished," he said, aiming it at my back as if the words could hurt me. "But the thing about a line is that it exists whether people like it or not. I had drawn mine. I let the chair return to the table with the care I use for fragile things I still respect, even if someone else has decided not to." When I faced the counter, my voice was smooth. "I'll be at the host stand," I told Arliss. "Please keep the cameras." Okay, Joran's stare tried to pin me in place. I met it and let out a small sound. Not a giggle, not a bark. Just a thin laugh, smooth as porcelain and precisely measured. It wasn't for humor. It was a scalpel. The room loosened by a breath. He blinked first. I turned to Arliss. "Please keep the cameras." I said the same way you ask for a receipt at the post office. The server glanced up at the dome above the service station and nodded. Procedure steadies hands. Mine were steady now. My phone hummed in my palm. A banner slid across the lock screen from the Family Trust app, pending River and Elm Brasserie. Table 14. Authorized user Joran Vale. The numbers were simple, not emotional at all. I tapped and the ledger opened like a clean page. I took a screenshot, then another with the battery date and minute visible. Accuracy is kindness to the truth. I enlarged the merchant ID until it filled the glass, then the table number, and finally the timestamp that anchored everything to this minute, this light, this mess. Confidence spread through my chest the way tea spreads warmth, not fast but thorough. I did not glance at him. I didn't need to. Let's separate checks, I told the server. I'll cover what I ordered, coffee and the omelet. She swallowed, grateful for the boundaries she could implement, and nodded. Paper spooled from the little printer near the host stand, busy and impartial. I placed my card on top of my itemized slip and kept my pen capped until it returned. "Mom, can we not make a thing?" Shannon whispered without looking at me. Her thumb hovered over her screen. Her eyes flicked toward Joran as if to ask how much she was allowed to say. I caught the old ache rising and let it drain away before it reached my mouth. "I'm not making a thing," I said. "I'm paying for mine." Arliss set a folded napkin on the edge of the table, apology tucked inside the linen. On behalf of the restaurant, he began. "A written note of the time and table is enough," I said gently. "You've been professional." Relief touched his face. He motioned to the terminal and a small incident slip printed with the minute and camera reference. Overreacting, Joran muttered, busying himself with a crumb that wasn't there. I let the word fall where it belonged on the floor with the plate. The server brought my slip. I uncapped my pen, signed, and added a proper tip. She had carried the weight of our table with grace. Her face was young, but her professionalism wasn't. I gathered my album, now dry at the edges, and slid it flat into my tote. My purse strap settled on my shoulder like a remembered habit. At the host stand, I asked, "Would you attach an internal note? Customer requested evidence retention for incident at table 14, 1055. The host typed carefully and read it back. I thanked her by name from her badge. Names matter when rooms try to erase people. On my phone, the trust pane waited. The sub-account label I had assigned years ago in a softer season sat beneath the pending charge, Vale Household Courtesy. Courtesy had sat unused. Today it had work. I didn't open the control screen. I only looked long enough to make sure the hooks were where I had left them. I turned to face the table one last time. "Please don't throw things at me again," I said as evenly as a weather report. It wasn't a threat. It was a boundary in plain English. To Arliss, I added, "Thank you for keeping the cameras." He inclined his head, a civility that told me he understood the difference between anger and order. Air tasted better a few steps from the table. I walked without hurry. The dining room's clatter resumed behind me, careful at first, then normal. At the threshold, I paused to check the details once more. Merchant ID table, minute camera reference. All tidy. I pressed my thumb to the Trust app, let Face ID open the gate, and did nothing else. Not here. Outside, Austin heat wrapped the morning in bright honesty. I stood beneath the shade of the awning where the painted letters of the restaurant's name threw faint shadows across the sidewalk. I lifted the phone and called Vincent. He didn't ask for stories when he answered. "Timestamps, merchant IDs, and who to serve first," he said, already walking his pen across paper. "Activate the morality clause," I replied. The words were light in my mouth, not because they were easy, but because they were right-sized. He confirmed the plan, a formal letter regarding misuse by an authorized user, a notice to the card issuer, preservation of evidence, a temporary freeze on discretionary sub-accounts until an in-person review. Back inside, the staff would sweep the shards and reset the table. People would eat and laugh and take pictures with the good light. That is what restaurants do. On the sidewalk, I watched a family push a stroller past me, a little boy pointing at the fountain like it had just been built. Life keeps moving. Dignities are restored by motion, too. Vincent asked for one more detail, and I supplied it the hour the table, the camera. My laugh returned thin and useful, not joy instrument. "Thank you," I said, and ended the call. I breathed in, squared my shoulders, and walked toward my car, my pearls cool against my skin. There would be time enough to open the control screen. There would be time to choose. The morning kept a bright edge. Outside, I called my attorney and said 3 words, "Activate morality clause." The shade under the awning felt cooler than the air, like a clean page after a blot. I stepped into it and called Vincent. "Activate the morality clause," I said. He did not ask for feelings. Give me timestamps, the table number, merchant ID, he replied, already writing. Relief braided itself with resolve. I had been waiting to speak a sentence that fit the morning. I opened my photo roll and sent him the screenshots in order the Trust app banner with pending across the top, the merchant line for River and Elm Table 14 glowing in white, the time my plate met tile minute and second. I added a photo of the incident slip Arliss printed. My thumb hovered over send, then pushed the whole packet through. Data travels faster than rumor. So should justice. Back at the host stand, I asked for something simple and specific. Please enter an evidence hold in writing. The young host paged Arliss, who appeared as if he had been rehearsing this all week. He guided me down a short hall into a small office that smelled like citrus cleaner and paper. The door stayed open. We were ordinary and official at once. Arliss printed a one-page notice titled, Evidence Retention 90 Days. A QR glyph sat in the corner like a seal. I read every line, then asked for a chain of custody section who could access who had and when. He nodded, typed, reprinted. I initialed each paragraph and wrote today's date in full, not numbers. Assurance-like dignity prefers specifics. He put Lacey, the area manager, on speaker. Lacey, this is Maura Hartwell, I said. Table 14 at 10:55. A plate was thrown at me. I requested camera retention. I have copies of the timestamp and merchant ID. I am not seeking spectacle, only preservation. Lacey's voice was brisk but warm. You have our cooperation, Ms. Hartwell. We'll lock the footage and annotate the incident. Institutional alignment is its own comfort. Arliss then drafted a short letter. We apologize for the disruption you experienced today. The entree was comped. He printed a receipt stamped comped in a red box that looked almost celebratory. I didn't celebrate. I accepted the apology because it was owed, not because it erased anything. Thank you, I said and meant it. Respect acknowledged is a start. Vincent's email arrived with the soft thud of authority. The subject line read, Notice Morality Clause. Activation Veil Subaccount Courtesy. The body was tight and plain abusive conduct, misuse of an authorized account, temporary freeze pending review, all charges subject to audit. He CC'd me in the restaurant, attaching the clause language we wrote years ago for exactly this kind of line crossing. Quiet empowerment doesn't need volume. It needs paper. I have one stipulation for the record, I told them. No public posting of any footage. Preserve for legal counsel only. Lacey agreed at once. We do not release guest video, she said, but I'll add your restriction to the file. She dictated to Arliss, who added a line beneath my initials. Boundaries stated clearly tend to hold. Arliss placed a manila folder on the desk and slid it toward me, a copy of the evidence retention notice with the QR, the apology letter, the comped receipt, a card with his name, and a half sheet with the incident number, BR 2411. He kept copies for their records. If counsel needs anything else, they can call me directly, he said. We shook hands. No small talk. He had a lunch rush to shepherd. I had a life to resume. I walked back through the dining room without looking for faces. On the sidewalk, the heat met me again, bright and honest. In the car, I set the folder on the passenger seat and let the engine idle while I waited for Vincent's follow-up. It came before the air turned cool. All right, he said. Filings sent. I'd like permission to audit recent house account activity tied to Joranne 6 months back to start. Sundays look noisy. I approved. Audit fully, I said. Reconcile names, signatures, and locations. He asked one last question. Do you want the freeze on all discretionary sub-accounts now or Monday after 9? I watched the restaurant doors through the windshield. Shannon came out first, holding her phone like a shield. Joranne followed several paces behind jaw-tight eyes on the curb. I did not wave. Monday is fine, I said. Let the record speak first. I ended the call and breathed long and clean. The folder felt light for what it carried. Inside were only copied pages, but a little order had returned to the day. I adjusted my pearls, set both hands on the wheel, and looked once more at the painted letters over the door. Then I turned the key, and the car eased away from the curb. By the time the first light turned green, Vincent had already asked for 6 months of statements. At the exit of the lot, a family pushed a stroller through the sun, the baby batting at a ribbon that refused to be caught. Ordinary noise steadied me better than any scripted apology ever could. I opened my notes and spoke a brief checklist into the mic screenshots, stored emails, archived incident number, logged receipt, photographed folder, secured. Then I texted the list to myself with the time and place. Paper trails do not forget even when people try. Neither do mothers who have learned the cost of swallowing unfairness. I set 2 Monday reminders: call bank and send Vincent the ledger. Quiet levers, not lobbies. I drove home with the air off and the windows down, letting the warm Austin breeze flatten the last of the restaurant smell. In my Zilker bungalow, the house felt level like a bubble finding center. I set my purse on the desk, turned the brass desk lamp, and opened the laptop. Vincent's message was waiting, polite and compact. Secure link below. 6-month merchant review house account. I clicked. A dashboard opened to neat columns: date, time, merchant, amount, device, token, authorized user. There was a quiet order to it that matched my breathing. One line item caught my eye, then another, then a pattern. Client lunch, the notes read, but the timestamp was Sunday, 17 p.m., Sunday after Sunday. The merchant code wasn't only River and Elm, it rotated through 2 sister locations. Each entry showed e-signature J. Vale. The device token matched to his phone ID. Amounts rose near month end. I leaned back and rolled the chair an inch from the desk the way I used to step back from a sewing pattern to be sure the pieces would meet. I overlaid the dates with our family calendar: PTA night, Emma's book fair, Jacob's soccer scrimmage. Charges overlapped. A small ache moved through me, not for money, but for hours bargained away. I took a sip of lukewarm water, the same control I kept at brunch, filling the room again. Vincent pinged. Mark, family, present versus work only. Export the 6 highest. I did my cursor steady. Screenshots stacked like index cards. I labeled each without adjectives. Sunday, 2 entrees bottle service. Sunday, 3 cocktails, no minors. Sunday, 3 p.m., patio seat. When the 6th was done, I wrote a note at the bottom that was really for myself: no public shaming use, for boundary setting only. An email from Arliss arrived with a subject line that carried its own backbone: BR 2F411 incident report. I opened the PDF. The first page listed time 10:53:12, table 14 service station, cam 2. The second showed a map of the floor, a small X at my chair, a small arrow labeled ARC. The next page held stills, the white plate leaving the table sauce in a bright thread across air. The server's statement was plain and accountable. The manager's signature was below with a digital seal. Lacey's name appeared. I breathed not triumph, but relief. Procedure had done what raised voices never manage it, put a frame around what happened, and kept opinion off the glass. I downloaded the packet, renamed the still Exhibit B, and tucked it into a folder that I would not show anyone unless required. Vincent's next email appeared almost immediately. Drafting 1-page summary. Please confirm, remedy tiers. I rested my fingers over the keys, let the metronome in my chest settle, and typed written apology from Duran, acknowledging conduct at River and Elm in the plate incident. Reimbursement plan for charges marked work only paid back to the trust within 90 days. Removal of Duran as an authorized user on the family house account effective immediately. If no response within 7 days, refer to compliance and freeze access pending review. I read it twice. It was clean, not punitive. Boundary, not revenge. I sent the list. He replied, received. Attaching summary for your records. The document was clear dates, amounts, device IDs, incident number, BR 2411 links to supporting files. I printed it not because paper was necessary, but because turning a page can return a person to herself. A second message from Arliss followed footage sealed for counsel only per your request. I thanked them both and added one more sentence for the record. Please confirm hold for 90 days. No social media release. The confirmation came back with a green check. I looked at the brass clock on my shelf, 5:02 p.m., and realized the day had been long without feeling wasted. The house was quiet the way it used to be when I waited up for Shannon as a teenager. I walked to the hall closet, pulled out a file box, and labeled 2 manila envelopes in block letters, Keep and Stop. Keep would hold the apology and the reimbursement schedule if they came. Stop would hold the removal forms if they didn't. I put both on the desk where I could see them not as threat, but as direction. I sat again and reread the still of the plate in the air. I would not forward it. I would not text it to a friend. I would keep it where it belonged in the file that would either stay closed or open when it needed to. I closed the laptop. The lamp threw a small, faithful circle of light on the desk. I wrote one last email to Vincent. Thank you for the speed. Please include that my goal is repair, not spectacle. He answered, Understood. Audit continues Monday. For tonight, rest. I smiled because the advice sounded like something I used to say to Shannon before big exams. You've done the work. Now let the work hold. I washed my hands, hung my scarf to dry, and set my pearls in their dish. The house settled. Outside, Zilker's evening birds shifted trees. I picked up a pen and on the back of the printed summary wrote in small script, I choose clarity. Then I printed 2 envelopes and wrote a single word on each, Keep and Stop. I set the 2 envelopes on the desk, felt my shoulders even, and let the room answer a simple question, what comes next? Okay, I arrived 10 minutes early and chose a corner table that the morning sun reached but didn't glare. The cafe's windows caught the slow parade on South Congress dog strollers, couples in running shoes. I set my purse on the chair beside me and felt for the 2 envelopes I had sealed last night. Their edges pressed like quiet decisions against my palm. I ordered plain coffee and water. No pastry, no sugar. I wanted a clear head and a steady voice. Shannon came in just after 9:15, shoulders high, phone in her hand, like a talisman. She kissed the air near my cheek, then sat with her back toward the line. An oat latte appeared with her name called, and she pretended not to hear it twice before rising to get it. When she returned, she set the cup down with the lid facing away from me and flipped her phone face down. We looked at the same knot in the tabletop for a breath. I'll keep this brief, I said. Yesterday inside River and Elm at 10:52, Joanne lifted my plate and threw it to the floor. The manager retained the footage. That is what happened. I didn't add feeling. I didn't need to. I let the record hold the weight. Shannon's jaw tightened, then released. I'm here to protect the children and the truth, I continued. I'm not here to ruin your marriage. That part is between you and your husband. The words sat between us like folded linen, plain, useful, without embroidery. She traced the seam of the to-go cup and didn't look up. I placed the 2 envelopes in the middle of the table. I had written the labels in block letters so there would be no misunderstanding. Keep. Stop. The paper made a soft sound on the wood that seemed louder than our voices. For a moment, we both watched the envelopes instead of each other. Keep, I said, tapping the first means money continues for the children's needs. Groceries, school fees, sports, medicine, college savings. I will tighten distribution and route it through a separate card in your name only. You'll send receipts once a month. No commentary required. I kept my tone even gentle where it mattered, firm where it had to be. Stop. I said, resting a finger on the second means any adult discretionary spending tied to my accounts ends today. No restaurants, salons, travel, or client lunches on Sundays. If either of you need something personal, you can pay for it yourselves. I won't argue and I won't explain this to friends or family. It's a boundary, not a punishment. She let out a breath through her nose. Mom, this is dramatic. The cup lid clicked under her thumb. I remembered her at 12 working that same nervous rhythm during spelling tests. I folded my hands to keep from reaching across the table. I've written this down so no one has to remember what was said, I replied. From my purse, I slid a single page with 2 boxes and a deadline. Check 1 by Tuesday, 5 p.m. No response counts as stop. If you choose keep, I'll send the new card this week. Her eyes lifted then wide with something I couldn't name. Are you going to tell anyone, she asked. Only the people who keep records, I said. The restaurant, the bank, my attorney. I'm not performing this in public. I opened the keep envelope and tucked a grocery gift card inside. Use this today if you need it, I said. No strings. She stared at the table a long time. The cafe soundtrack changed songs. A barista laughed at something near the register. A child negotiated a muffin. A bicycle bell rang outside. Life kept its pace. I'll think, she said finally. Tuesday, I answered. 5 o'clock. We stood and moved in opposite directions like dancers who knew their marks. Outside, the heat was already building. I walked to my car and sat until the air turned cool, then drove home without the radio. That evening, just after 9, my phone blinked on the counter. A text from Shannon. You're making this worse. Joran says you're spinning stories. He says you tripped the plate. I read the words twice, then a third time, letting them pass through and out like the tide. I typed and deleted a paragraph that tried to explain how physics and cameras work, how dignity does not raise its voice, how love sometimes builds fences to keep children from the road. I erased it all. I wrote one sentence, I'm choosing the children and the record. Then I put the phone face down and washed the dinner dishes. In bed, the envelopes lived again in my mind, plain as road signs. Keep for what must be protected. Stop for what must no longer be funded. Between them, a narrow lane where a family might still pass without scraping the paint off its sides. I asked no blessings from the ceiling, only for stamina and a steady hand. Sometime near midnight, I woke and checked the dead screen. No new message. The house was quiet. The city hummed its soft electric lullaby beyond the trees. I set the phone back on the table and closed my eyes, already measuring Tuesday by its clean, bright edges. On my desk, I laid out the choice sheet, again smoothed the crease, and wrote, Tues 5, 0 p.m. on a sticky note I would not ignore. I set an alarm, printed a spare copy, and clipped it to a manila folder labeled House Account. I wasn't angry. I was organized. Sometimes that's the only bridge a mother has when love is argued with noise. I set both envelopes by the door. Sure. By Monday, my attorney's email would say, in bold, litigation holds 7 days. At 9:03 on Monday, Vincent's subject line slid into my inbox, litigation holds 7 days. The CC row looked like small soldiers, the restaurant's legal desk, the area manager council for their parent group. My name sat last and steady. I exhaled and read every word. The notice was clean. It covered POS logs, reservation records, staff shift statements, and the camera archives for the hour, bracketing the incident. Dates, device IDs, retention windows, no drama, no adjectives. Procedure is a language that never raises its voice. I understood it fluently, and today it spoke for me. Red receipts blinked in order Arlie's first, then a legal inbox that returned accepted ticket ST901. Lacey's acknowledgement followed with a curt, received preserving. I answered with one line, please keep footage sealed, for counsel only. Do not release externally. I added the date, the minute, and the table number in parentheses. I have learned that precision is a kind of mercy. Vincent appended a countdown block beneath his signature. 7 days. Response due next Monday at 5. Failure routes to compliance in court. I typed those lines again into my notebook, then placed a sticky note on the corner of my monitor. Hold expires. The house felt very quiet, like a stage before the curtain goes up. A separate secure link arrived, one image. I clicked. The still showed my plate mid-air sauce, bright in an ugly halo, the floor waiting. My face was cropped per privacy. I felt a pinch and let it pass. I renamed the file Exhibit B Internal and dragged it into the folder with BR2411. I did not text a soul. Metadata sat under the image like a spine capture time device ID handler names. Lacey's digital seal anchored the first transfer. Arliss's badge number marked the second. Vincent replied, received, preserved. I closed the window and folded my hands until my breathing matched the quiet. We ran one more draft together, a concise letter to Joanne and Shannon, requesting an apology, a reimbursement plan, and conditions tied to authorized use. Groceries pharmacy, school lunches, clinic bills would remain whitelisted for the children. Everything else paused. The sentences were short and ordinary, the way rules should be when they protect a home. An auto reply bounced back from Joanne's inbox, out-of-office client meetings. The timestamp overlapped school drop-off. I made a note and refused the invitation to feel anything about it. Some truths don't need my temperature attached. I reread the restaurant's apology from Saturday and set it beneath the still. Professional, specific, dated. Respect looks like that on paper. I brewed tea, added lemon, and let the mug warm my hands, while the printer spit out tidy copies for a red folder marked Keep and a blue folder marked Stop. By mid-morning, my desk looked like a small clerk's counter. Letters, signed envelopes, addressed calendar, blocked for the Hold's End. I checked the living room for stray toys and found a single sticker on the sofa arm. I smoothed it down instead of peeling it off. Not everything has to be clean today. I sent the letter. I placed the folders on the shelf beside the photo albums. I told no one what I was doing except the people who keep records. The city outside my window thinned into the heat, cicadas starting up early. The quiet inside me did not feel like defeat. It felt like a room finally locked. I forwarded the notice to my paper planner the old way by copying it in ink. The pen slowed me enough to feel the shape of each boundary who was asked to hold what would be preserved when the clock would run. I added small boxes beside each item so I could check them off without a screen. My hands have packed lunches and signed permission slips and washed countless dishes. Today they were built for steadiness, not speed. On the phone, Vincent and I kept our conversation plain. He spoke in short questions, and I answered with short facts: the time the plate left the table, the names on the reservation, the seat location, the service station camera. He said good at the end of each list, the way a coach might when a runner stays in her lane. When the printer rested between pages, I stepped to the window. Zilker's pecan trees threw narrow shadows across the street. A neighbor guided a stroller, talking softly to a child who pointed at a dog. The ordinary world goes on even when a private one tilts. I let that observation sit where outrage might have tried to take up space. I drafted the family letter twice before I found the tone I could live with a year from now. No adjectives, no predictions, no swipes. Just terms, apology requested, in writing reimbursement drafted so it would not bruise the household budget removal from authorized use, and a final line about next steps if silence held. I signed with my name and the same steadiness I used to sign field trip checks. Names matter. So does posture. Before I sealed the envelopes, I added a postscript. If you choose to talk, choose Tuesday. It was a door, not a trap. When I set the letters in the outgoing tray, my heartbeat did not spike. The only sounds were the air conditioner clicking on and the rush in the vents. On the porch, I watered the basil and let the morning be. Before noon, one more ping hit my screen. Access revoked request. Confirm. The prompt arrived like a doorbell I'd been expecting. Access revoked request confirm. I held my thumb to the phone, felt the tiny click of my pulse in the sensor, and watched the green ring complete. The status turned red, then gray, revoked. I exhaled once quietly enough that even the house didn't creak in answer. A log populated beneath the banner. Device tokens slid off the list one by one, like name tags lifted from a corkboard. The virtual card closed. Merchant caps fell into place. I took screenshots without flourish and saved them to the same folder that had earned its calm new name, Keep. A push alert chimed attempted charge, $48, $12 declined MCC restaurant. The timestamp matched lunch hour. I set the phone on the blotter and smoothed the corner of my notepad. The feeling wasn't triumph. It was the click of a lock finally fitting the door it should have secured months ago. Shannon called. Her voice was careful, like she was stepping around glass. Did you block everything essentials go through, I said. Groceries, pharmacy, school clinic. The rest pauses until we settle the apology and the plan. She didn't argue the details. Okay, she said a word shaped like a truce she didn't sign. He says this is harsh. It's precise, I answered. and temporary. The kids are covered. We both listened to the space after that where a different family might have found comfort. We did not. An email mirrored through the restaurant system reservation request from J. Vale declined per account status. A second notice followed from a sister location. Both included device fingerprints that matched yesterday's audit. I forwarded the pair to Vincent with a clean subject line post-notice attempts. No commentary attached. Arliss sent a courtesy note. Their CRM had matched the authorized user tag. No scene, no exchange, just a quiet decline. I thanked him for the professionalism. Dignity, even small and administrative, still mattered. Messages bloomed in a group thread I rarely opened. Friends planned a midweek brunch. Joranne suggested another venue after 2 silent declines. I did not scroll further. A small charge from HEB cleared under the whitelist, the exact opposite of drama. I let that be my proof of purpose and closed the thread. Another push alert, attempted charge. 70 through I-90 declined. The system attached the map pin for a patio 3 miles away. I archived it beside the first and felt nothing sharpen. Boundaries work best when they don't need an audience. Joranne texted, "This is petty." I typed 3 drafts I did not send and chose the 4th. This is policy. Kids are covered. He left it there. Silence is sometimes the smartest sentence. I appended the 2 declines in the grocery pass to Vincent's summary sheet marked Week 1 Actions. Paper doesn't pick sides. It remembers. I checked the time, then stood to stretch the kind of small break you forget to take when you're busy raising polite adults and end up needing later for yourself. By early afternoon, a new subject line appeared that didn't blink. Compliance review scheduled. Please prepare receipts. Institutions don't argue, they audit. I forwarded the notice to Vincent and opened a fresh folder on my desktop named simply Receipts. I brewed tea, the mint kind I keep for unsettled days, and watched the first cool of steam lift from the cup. Outside, a mockingbird traded notes with a car alarm down the block call and response duty and noise. My phone sat face down. The house was quiet, the way a stage is quiet before the curtain rises. Shannon didn't call again. I didn't either. Love, at least the version that survives, sometimes requires quiet hallways and spelled-out rules. I had offered both. I had also kept space for repair. That space was not infinite, but it was real, and it was marked with the names of 2 children who did not ask for any of this. I filed the last screenshot and set the mug on its saucer with care. I wasn't erasing anyone. I was erasing access. There's a difference, and it matters. By afternoon, another subject line arrived that didn't blink. Compliance review, scheduled. Please prepare receipts. I pulled the banker's box from the hall closet, the one I'd labeled taxes and other humbling things, and set it by the desk. Receipts do not care about charm. They care about dates, amounts, signatures, and whether a promise was kept. I sorted a small pile into 3 trays, home kids other. A calendar reminder chimed for school pickup. I left it on even though I wasn't on duty today. Rituals keep a house upright. I checked the carve-out list again, tracing each line with a finger. Groceries, pharmacy, school lunches, clinic bills. It comforted me to see care itemized like tucking blankets over sleeping children. Another email landed from the restaurant system confirming the incident file remained sealed under the hold. I saved the note and added one of my own to the folder, Do Not Forward. When in doubt, protect the quiet. Vincent replied to my forward with his usual brevity, Received. Keep documenting. We'll let the clock work. Time paired with records is a decent advocate. Outside, the sun angled toward late day. The oak in the yard threw patient shade across the steps. I wrote a final line in my notebook, Children first, always then capped my pen and put everything away. The quiet felt earned. I made tea and let it cool on the desk morning subject lines, stacked like mail through a slot. Compliance review receipts. Please PTA conduct reminder. Meeting hold. I flagged each without hurry, drew a long breath, and squared the little ruler I keep beside my keyboard. Order first, then feeling. On video, Vincent appeared in a soft blue tie that always looks like Saturday, even on a Tuesday. He walked me through a 3-point prep timeline, spending extracts, and the incident packet labeled BR2411. Brevity wins audits, he said. Let the numbers talk, you just confirm them. The compliance notice itself was plain columns, bullets, no adjectives. It asked for entertainment client meals and weekend charges 6 months back. I did not argue with a single line. Institutions don't argue, they audit. I felt my shoulders lower as if the paper had corrected my posture. We matched clocks. I read out the declined attempts after access was revoked, then the exact window around the plate on the floor. He typed, I cross-checked the cursor, blinking like a metronome. When the times lined up, the sheet looked clean enough to be a placemat. No frill, only facts. I labeled each file without decoration, Decline 1, Decline 2, Exhibit B, Internal. I left my temper out of the file names, the way you leave spice out of breakfast. It keeps the day steady. A neutral note from the PTA chair arrived while we worked a reminder to model respectful conduct at school events. No names. The kind of email all parents get when one parent behaves like a headline. I pictured my grandchildren at recess and resisted the itch to explain anything to anyone. Then a neighbor wrote from an address I barely recognized. She and her sister had been on the patio at the restaurant. She saw a plate leave a hand and heard the word, Unwelcome. She offered to sign a statement. I read it twice, once for the facts and once for the kindness of offering them. Vincent sent her the standard affidavit link. I thanked her without telling a single story and moved her message to a folder named Witness. Small, neat, sufficient. My phone buzzed with a text from Shannon. Can we do a mediation pastor's office? No lawyers. I let myself feel the softness of that ask, then set it back down like china. Yes, I replied with a written agenda, minutes recorded and childcare covered. No blame. Only facts and remedies. The compliance officer joined by audio. His voice had the careful flatness of stone. Vincent summarized our artifacts. I said one line. All evidence remains sealed and used for review only. The officer thanked us and set a follow-up for Thursday. No drama, only timestamps. I printed the packet on heavy paper, slid it into a manila envelope, and drove downtown. The lobby of the compliance office was cool as marble and smelled faintly of coffee and copier ink. I handed the envelope to the receptionist, who stamped a small, satisfying date on the receipt. Back in the car, I texted Shannon, again mediation confirmed for Thursday at 6 p.m. Agenda attached, kids first. I did not press send and then stare at the dots. I sent it and drove because an adult does the next right thing without asking the heir for applause. At home, I added the neighbor's pending affidavit to the index and set a small tray of tea beside my keyboard. Vincent pinged, all filings logged, Thursday call at 10 a.m. I replied with a thumbs up and the word receive just once. By noon, the house was quiet enough to hear the mail carrier close the lid on my box. I closed my laptop and let my hands rest in my lap. I had not raised my voice. I had not tried to convert anyone. I had set my terms and met the system on its own ground. At 6 p.m., the church office light would glow, and 3 chairs would wait, mine, my daughter's, and the one he hadn't earned. I would sit first and slide the agenda across the table, because if there was to be peace, it would begin with order. Before I shut the printer, I made one more pass over the checklist. Copies for compliance, copies for counsel, and 1 pared down packet for mediation. 3 pages, plain language, no photographs. I added a small footer to each page with the date and 1 line prepared in good faith for resolution. It was not poetry, but it kept my spine straight. I packed the pages beside a pen that doesn't blot and a stack of sticky flags. I do not bring daggers to family tables. I bring tabs. Lunch hour nudged the neighborhood into motion. A delivery truck sighed outside. The wind lifted the corner of a flyer on my porch. I let the kettle boil and thought about my grandchildren's Tuesday folders, spelling lists, a penciled star, maybe a permission slip, half crumpled in a backpack. Children read adults for weather. That image helped me trim a sentence from the mediation agenda that sounded like a closing argument. I replaced it with 7 words. for the kids' groceries, school, and quiet. Vincent called once more before noon, a check-in I hadn't asked for. "You are doing exactly what we said on day one," he told me. "You are protecting the children and the record." I thanked him and ended the call while he was kind. Praise is like sugar. It's better in spoons. I wrote a final note to myself on an index card. Don't argue. Ask the clock. Don't accuse. Ask the receipt. I tucked the card into my purse next to the 2 envelopes I had not thrown away. Keep and stop weighted there like tools, not threats. The pastor's office smelled faintly of lemon oil and old paper, the kind of clean that asks you to lower your voice. It was Thursday at 6 on the dot when I took the first chair. I laid a pen beside a printed agenda and set a glass of water within reach. If there would be peace, it would begin with order. Shannon came in second eyes, rimmed with the sort of tired you only recognize on your own child. Joran arrived last, phone in hand, a smile shaped for other rooms. The pastor, a soft-spoken man who insisted we use his first name, closed the door with the same care you'd use for a cradle. He sat and spoke ground rules. No interruptions, no raised voices, facts before feelings, minutes recorded and shared. When it was my turn, I used 3 sentences. On Saturday at River and Elm, a plate was thrown from our table to the floor. A slur was directed at me. I left. I did not add color. It was enough. Joran shrugged. It slipped, he said. And you're making more of my tone than there was. The pastor asked for specifics, not posture. What do you remember saying, he asked. Joran's eyes slid toward Shannon. I don't recall the exact words he said, and let the sentence dangle. Shannon leaned forward, palms flat. Can we move on for the kids, she asked, voice thin as tracing paper. I turned the agenda so she could read the items again. We can move on with an apology, I said, and with a plan to repair what can be repaired. I had not come to swing the door shut. I had come to install a hinge. The pastor asked for a timeline, not a story. I read from my notes the exact minute the plate struck tile, the manager's written incident number, the evidence retention notice and its QR. The series of declined charges after access was revoked. When I finished, the pastor folded his hands and asked if anyone disputed those times. I had a client meeting when that decline happened, Joran said. The pastor checked the line again. This one is 12:26, he said gently. Shannon, who had school pickup. The air thinned. I did, she said, almost whispering. We let the silence stand. The pastor read a short note that had gone to all parents at the elementary school, a generic reminder to model respect at events, to use calm language to keep hands to ourselves. Can we agree this applies at brunch too, he asked. I said yes. Shannon nodded. Joran looked at his shoes and said nothing at all. I slid a single page across the table, apology and writing reimbursement in installments, removal from authorized users going forward, pediatric carve-outs untouched. The words were plain. This preserves what belongs to the children, I said, and asks only for respect and repayment. I chose not to add anything else. The pastor mentioned a neighbor who had offered a statement from the patio, a brief account signed no pictures attached. We won't review exhibits here, he said. We are only noting that third-party accounts exist. I kept my face neutral. Joran sat back. I won't apologize for a misunderstanding, he said, and restoring the card would help appearances. People talk. I shook my head once. We don't manage this with optics, I said. We manage it with conduct. Then what happens? He asked. I slid my pen beside the final line on the agenda. Friday at 5, I said. Apology delivered. First payment scheduled. If not, counsel proceeds, and I continue to restrict adult spending tied to my accounts. The pastor wrote the sentence into the minutes and underlined the time. If I choose, keep, Shannon asked, will the kids be okay? I met her gaze so she would not have to hunt for the answer. They will, I said. Groceries, school, clinics. That continues. We stood. I thanked the pastor, left my copy of the plan on the table for the record, and gathered my purse and the thin folder of minutes. Joanne walked out first. Shannon hesitated, then touched my sleeve. "I'll let you know," she said. Friday, I reminded her not unkindly. She nodded and the door closed with a hush. Outside, dusk made a small cathedral of the live oaks. I paused and breathed. My car door clicked open. I didn't check my phone in the lot. At home, I put the minutes in the cabinet where I keep birth certificates and spare keys. I brewed chamomile and sat at the kitchen table with the television off. Letting the quiet say what I needed, I did not raise my voice. I raised the bar. When the cup was empty, I rinsed it, locked the back door, and turned out the lights. Before bed, I reread the minutes, tracing the tidy lines the pastor had drawn between what happened and what would happen next. I circled the deadline and wrote it once more on a sticky note for the fridge, Friday 5th, Oruro p.m. No speeches, no scenes, just the same 3 steps we had already set. Apology, first payment, removal from the card. I slipped the neighbor's contact into the folder and set the folder by the door so I would not be tempted to tinker with it in the night. Sleep came like a clean page. I slept okay. Morning came like a clean ledger. I walked to the porch for the paper and found an envelope waiting, no return address, my name written in block letters steady as a ruler. On the flap, a single word, receipts. I carried it inside, laid it on the counter, and stood there for a long moment with both palms against the cool stone. Whatever it held, I would meet it the way I had met everything this week, eyes open, mouth closed, pen ready. Dawn found an unmarked envelope on my porch. No return address, only my name in block letters. Inside, photocopies of Sunday tabs, totals circled in red, and a sticky note tucked like a small flag for the children. I stood barefoot, the paper cool against my palm, and let the quiet admit what pride would not somebody else had been watching. At the kitchen table, I pinned the pages under a magnet and brewed coffee. Vincent's email arrived before the kettle clicked. The neighbor's affidavit was notarized. Her timestamps matched the restaurant logs and our notes. He attached the PDF with 5 words I trust, added to the packet. Procedure is mercy when feelings want to run. I opened a blank document and wrote my last letter. The words were simple. An apology due by 5 o'clock today. A first reimbursement enclosed small enough to be doable, large enough to be real. Authorized access ended without exception. I read it once for tone and once for clarity, then signed my name. At the bottom, I drew a line beneath the total. This is the last check you'll ever cash in my name. Before lunch, I drove to River and Elm. The dining room was sliding into its quiet between seatings. Sun lay clean across the host stand. Arliss met me with a file. We reviewed the incident number, the retention notice, the staff debrief. He handed me a letter on heavy paper, a formal apology for the disruption, and a note that training had been renewed. I signed the closeout, thanked him for professionalism that makes dignity possible, and left with the copy. On the curb, Vincent's next email hit. The employer's review was complete. Policy violation confirmed. Entertainment expenses suspended. Remedial ethics training assigned. Nothing dramatic. Institutions do not rage, they correct. I breathed out and let the air go clean through. I took the long way along Lady Bird Lake. Rowers stitched seams across the water, cyclists floated by. Austin looked like itself again, busy, not cruel. The warm wind lifted the edge of the envelope on the seat. There's a pause after a boundary holds when your breath changes. Mine did. I did not feel triumphant. I felt accurate, and accuracy requires no audience. The afternoon offered smaller mercies. The PTA board sent a brief reminder about modeling respect at school events. No names. I closed the laptop and watered the basil until the soil went dark and fragrant. The ordinary is an anchor if you let it be. At 4:15, a car door shut. Shannon stood at the threshold with the envelope labeled "Keep" against her chest. She looked 10 and entirely grown at once. "I choose this," she said, voice small but steady. I stepped aside and we sat at the table where birthday candles have been blown and science projects glued crooked at midnight. She slid a page toward me, an apology in her hand, careful and neat. Beneath it lay a second page from Joranne short-lawyered, but it said, "I'm sorry. I did not grade the sentences. The words existed." That was the point. We reviewed the payment plan Vincent had drafted, dates, amounts, a dedicated account. Pediatric carve-outs remained, groceries, school lunches, clinic bills. Everything else stopped. We initialed each line and left no blanks to invite wishful reading later. "Will you still come to Jacob's game?" she asked, fingers steadying on the table's edge. "Unless a doctor says otherwise," I said, and we both smiled the careful smile of people who know how thin ice sounds and choose to walk anyway. Across the street, a car idled. Joranne didn't come in. A text buzzed. "Understood." I replied with a postage stamp line. "Thank you for complying. There is grace in small words when you refuse to stage a scene." At 5:07, my phone chimed 3 times. Compliance receipt acknowledged. Restaurant closeout filed. First reimbursement posted. I forwarded the notices to Vincent and set my phone face down. The quiet felt like a room you've just painted. Fresh, a little fragile. Finally yours. We met the boys at Zilker Park. Kites tugged the wind, writing bright cursive across the sky. Shannon pointed out a hawk. The youngest called it a kite, with a beak. We shared a bench and water, the silence of people who have cried in the same kitchen and now can sit without explaining. When the red kite rose, its tail flicked and held. I showed Jacob how to tuck the line to feel the pull without burning his skin. The air held cut grass and clean water. At home, the porch light clicked on as the sun finished its work. I filed the folder affidavit apology reimbursement plan closeouts in the cabinet with the passports and winter photographs. I labeled the spine "Quiet Win" in pencil because ink felt like bragging. Then I locked the drawer. I poured tea and stood at the window where the street and live oaks make their quiet agreement each night. A sprinkler ticked. A single dog barked and changed its mind. A mother learns to hear the difference between noise and signal. This week was all signal. Keep your records. Protect the children. Lead with dignity. Do not be erased. If you've ever been called unwelcome at your own table, hear me. Dignity has a volume. Mine is quiet, and it carries through a dining room and a host stand across a pastor's desk into a compliance office and out over a field where kites climb, because someone steady is holding the line. It will carry tomorrow, too, in ordinary ways, the ones that actually build a life. Here's what I learned. Friends, dignity is a boundary you hold, not a scene you make. Keep records, protect. Kids first, speak in facts, and let institutions do the loud work. You don't have to win with volume, you can win with order, patience, and a clean paper trail. If someone calls you unwelcome at your own table, remember you decide who you are and what you fund. What part of this hit home for you? Have you ever chosen quiet strength over noise? If this story moved you, tap subscribe, drop a 1, or tell me where you're watching from. If it missed the mark, say why I'm listening. Share this with someone who needs a calm plan. New stories weekly. Thanks for spending time with me today. Okay,